Hey everybody, it's your favorite talking axolotl back again. I just want to firstly apologize because I don't think I can get the A Math Part 2 before O-levels this year, which will cover all the Sec 4 topics. It really took up way too much time, more than I expected, so I think it's only gonna come out probably at the end of this year or next year when I have more time to work on it. And also, because Axolotl Sensei got a full-time job, because I need to feed myself, you know. But for all of those who are taking O-levels now, I'm just gonna share with you the most efficient way to study, at least for me, that I use all the way from secondary school all the way up to university. And I know these tips won't work for everyone, so this is just a disclaimer that it's the lazy man's kind of study method, and I don't aim to be like the top student or anything. I just want to do decently and not study that much because I'm too busy playing games and stuff. Yeah, okay, let's go. Okay, so the first tip I have is this thing called the space repetition study technique. So whenever you study something, right, and it goes into your memory, there's actually two kinds of memory. So there's the short-term memory, which, you know, those authentication 6-digit codes. You kind of remember it once, and then you never remember it after that 10 seconds or so. And then there's the long-term memory. So think of things like an experience that, or a concert that you went that you kind of remember forever. So our goal is to kind of whenever we study something, to convert it from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. So there's this idea called the forgetting curve. So I'm just gonna give an analogy. So in a certain subject, right, let's say you have 10 topics, right, and then you just focus on one of them. So that one topic, imagine I spend 5 hours studying that topic for the first time. I remember it for about 10 days and then I kind of forget it afterwards. So after that, you kind of need to study it again. But instead of 5 hours the first time I study it, maybe I only need 30 minutes, and then I can actually remember it for a longer amount of time. So for example, 20 days. And then the next time, I have to spend even less time revising it, maybe about 10 minutes or so, and I can remember it from even longer. So the first time you study a topic, it kind of goes into your short-term memory. The more you revisit it and the more you practice on it, it kind of goes from the short-term memory into your long-term memory. So our goal, right, is for all the topics at the day of the exam, for all the topics that you want to study, make sure that they are in your long-term memory, because you can't really count on your short-term memory. Short-term memory is only good for cramming, which I will talk about more later on. Okay, the second tip is to don't study every topic. Okay, I know that sounds crazy, but rather don't spend an equal amount of time on each topic. I know a lot of the teachers say that every topic is worth it to study. I think that some topics are just more worth it to study in the exam than others. So I don't know if you've heard about this thing called the 80-20 rule. So it's kind of a rule of life or something where it's 80% of the world's money comes from 20% of the people. So how does it apply to us in exams? In the ideal scenario, right, 80% of the marks in any kind of exam can be studied from 20%, just 20% of the textbook. So the difficult part comes from, so what is that 20% that you want to study? Okay, there is kind of a few shortcuts that I have. The easiest way is if you know someone that's an expert at the subject. So for example, a teacher or whatever that can tell you what's the 20%. But if you don't have that, there are two methods that I found. Okay, the first one is to draw out the skill tree of the subject. You know how in those RPG games there's those skill trees where you can progress from one skill to another, one branching path and another branching path and so on. So in every subject there are topics that are based on previous topics. Okay, so for example for math, there's a topic like algebra, and above algebra is quadratic equations. So you can't do quadratic equations if you don't have algebra knowledge. Moving on higher in the tree, then there's the quadratic graph drawing. So you can't do quadratic graph drawing if you don't know how to do quadratic equations. However, there are some topics that are standalone topics. So for example, set language and notation, where it's just a standalone topic and it's not a prerequisite for anything else. The topics that are most important are the ones with a very high skill tree, and they're probably worth a lot of marks. If you had a decision whether to study algebra or to study set language and notation, I think the answer is quite obvious. You want to study algebra. Okay, so the next method is to actually flip through your TYS. you're gonna try to flip through and find out what's the most worth it topics. So the most worth it topics have 3 criteria. Okay, number 1, it must be easy to understand. Now I know it's a little bit subjective because some people find certain topics easier to understand than others, but just find out what works for you. Okay, number 2, it is consistent. So you know how there's some questions that you see, wow, it comes out like every year in the exam. So those are the consistent questions and the worth it topics. And number 3, it's a high return on investment. Whenever you study a certain topic, you're investing that amount of time, right? And you want it to have a decent amount of marks to come out in the exam. So if a topic has 2 out of the 3, I think it's already quite worth it. And if it's 3 out of 3, it's definitely an S tier topic. Okay, so for me, right, since I'm like kind of lazy, I use this thing called the 60, 30, and 10 rule. Okay, so for the first 60%, right, it's all of the most worth it, best S tier topics in a particular subject. So I'm gonna really focus my time studying those, and my aim for those 60% is to get all the marks, or at least as close to perfect score as possible for those 60%. Okay, then after that, right, the 30%, so there are topics that are like not super worth it, but they're still kind of like worth it to study. So I'm gonna make sure if an easy question comes out, I definitely know how to do it, and if a slightly harder one comes out, then I'm just gonna pray that, you know, I know how to do it. And so the last 10% is topics that are completely not worth it at all, or are very tedious to do. For me, I hate topics that require a lot of memorization. So either 1, I just completely don't study it if I don't have the time, or number 2, I cram it right before the exam, like literally the night before the exam. So a lot of people advise against cramming, but this is where you really gotta trust the 60 and 30% to carry you, so that when you cram the last 10%, it actually goes into your short-term memory. Okay, number 3, don't start from question 1 in any math or science exam. I see it's such a throw when people just start from question 1 and then they just go from 1, 2, 3, 4. Many people forget that having good exam technique and time management skills is huge for any exam. It can really boost your grades, I think like 1 or 2 grades up. So this is my strategy on how to tackle any math and science exam. So the first 5 minutes of the exam, I call it like strategy time. And you're just gonna look for 2 things. So number 1, you're gonna look for what topic is this question on, and number 2, you're gonna look for, is it an easy or difficult question? Rather, have I seen the question before in my revision, or have I not seen the question before? You're just gonna take a look and then you're gonna start annotating all that you know onto the question paper. For example, in A math, right, if you see like no real and distinct roots, you're just gonna write down b squared minus 4ac. So you're just gonna info dump all of the things that you need onto the paper, so that when you actually do the paper, it's less stressful for you to, oh, I need to remember this, I need to remember that. No, it's all written down for you already. Okay, so after that, what order do you actually do the questions in? So you're gonna do the questions from most confident into least confident. And the most confident ones, right, you're trying to group all the topics together. You know how your brain is really difficult to like multitask and go from like one topic and then you do the next question, it's like another topic that's totally unrelated. Yeah, so we're gonna avoid that by grouping all of the confident and easy to do questions first. So we're gonna do all of those first, and we're gonna leave all of the questions that we are like not confident in all the way to the last. Okay, the last tip is to actually try to be interested in whatever you're studying. I know it's kind of difficult to be interested in studying how the quadratic graph works or set language and notation when all you see are these squiggly lines. And there's this idea called soul theory, is that if you truly want to be good at something, you have to give your entire heart and soul to it. Now, I'm not asking you to sell your soul to math or history or whatever, but the tip is to try to be interested in whatever you're studying, at least until the O-levels are over. So for example, when you're studying like math, you should ask yourself, how does a mathematician think? Am I actually approaching the problem the most optimal way? And if I've solved it, is there another way to solve it? Is there a harder version of the question I can think about? So you're trying to challenge your mind, you know? And another tip is to actually just watch. I love this YouTube channel called Crash Course. They make really good videos. Even if the videos are not like 100% related, but they can actually get you interested in the subject. Being interested in the subject, you can kind of like fake it till you make it. So if you tell your brain, hey, I'm actually interested in this subject, you'll tend to be like more receptive to studying. Once again, your favorite axolotl is wishing all of you that's taking the O-levels this year all the best. I hope these study techniques actually help you. I mean, this is just my way of studying, but I hope it's kind of somehow useful to you. And go ahead and get that A1. Let's go, baby!